All right, what's going on? Coming back with another video that is going through the book that I wrote called The Intuitive Chef. Going through it chapter by chapter. I've already covered chapters 4 and 1, I believe. And now I'm going to do chapter 3. So, what is the Intuitive Chef? The Intuitive Chef is a guide for anybody that wants to begin looking at cooking as a spiritual practice. For anybody that wants to begin, learning how to incorporate God in the kitchen with them. God, your ancestors, your spirit team, however you want to slice that up. It's about making the process of cooking easier by allowing yourself to be a clear vessel to channel the information, the recipes, so on and so forth from them. You get what I'm saying? So check that out. I'm going to put the link for that below. And yeah, you know, like, share, and subscribe the video. And let's get to it. So this video is going to be called Allowing Yourself to be Led, and it's going to cover chapter 3, which is called Guidance in the Kitchen. All right, so within you, there is an innate knowing that already knows how to cook whatever it is that you're thinking of. This aspect of you is called your inner divine chef. At least that's what I call it. So, I'm going to talk about the two things that are your guides while you're in the kitchen, and this is your vision and your intuition. The vision being that which you have in mind to cook, the idealized version of it, and then your intuition, which is knowing your intuition, which is your soul speaking to you, telling you, hey, these are the steps that you need to take. The part of you that already knows that you just have to listen to be guided throughout the meal. So it only takes a small idea to be held in the mind in order for the instructions needed to come forth. What does the finished product smell like? What does it taste like? What does it look like? Is this a brand new thing that you never tried? Is this a brand new thing that you've never tried to cook before? Or is this just a meal that you would like to replicate that you came across? Either way, hold that vision in your mind and allow your intuition to be the guiding force toward that goal. So, your intuition will be awakened by way of movements, which could look like you reaching for specific items, stirring the pot, and knowing to set timers without having to consciously think of these things. Or it will remind you to look at something, the oven, the rice that's almost done, or possible safety hazards, making sure that the path is already clear and that you keep the path clear in order for you to move forward. The biggest thing here is to not question this force, but to let it guide you the way a ventriloquist would its puppet. Excuse the language, I know the word puppet, but that's exactly what your inner divine chef is doing. You can sit in the background while, your body gets puppeted around between stirring pots, opening the oven, cooking, chefing, doing the whole nine while you cooking. The only thing that it is important for you to do is to make a choice about what to cook. Hold that vision in its idealized form and allow the divine chef in you to lead the way. I'm also going to double back to this toward the end of the video. But yeah, figure out what you want to cook. You can choose two things. You can choose to let your soul say, hey, this is what we're going to cook tonight. Your ancestors, your spirit team, like, hey, this is what we would like you to learn how to cook. Or actually make a decision like, hey, I'm going to make some spaghetti for tonight. Now, don't just go into the kitchen looking around like, oh, well, let me just throw some shit together. You're going to waste a whole lot of time, a whole lot of money when you do stuff like that. All right. You want to go into the kitchen purposefully. You You want to have the intention of cooking food that tastes good, or having the intention to experiment in the kitchen. The biggest difference between experimenting and just winging it is that experimenting still follows a set of rules, you know? So if your experiment is to replicate a meal that you seen when you was out and about, or your favorite meal from your favorite restaurant, you know, you're going to get the items necessary to cook that. Whereas just winging it is kind of like coming home, getting halfway through the meal and realizing that the other half of the ingredients you need is still at the store, but you just came up in here thinking you got it. And now, now you can't finish anything. Now the meal is going to be incomplete. And, ain't nobody gonna leave out in the middle of the meal to go get some food. If you don't have nobody around you to go do that for you, everything's kind of ruined at that point. So, the blueprint of a meal. For those of us that have been in the field of study for a very long time and have learned the many tips and tricks of the trade, you get to a point where you can mentally break down the process that took place in order to get to a specific conclusion. No different than manifesting a particular result, you break down what the required steps are and you put them in order, and then you begin to take action. Cooking applies the same concept of creating a blueprint toward the manifestation of a meal. Once you cook enough times and get better at the ritual of cooking, you can start to pick apart what is required when you're in the kitchen. By breaking down the steps that lead up to a finished meal, you're able to save time at the grocery store, save money that gets spent on food, you waste less time in the preparation of cooking a meal because now you are clear on what is necessary. Through this process of working backwards, you can lessen the mental load and take things one step at a time without succumbing to being overwhelmed. So, when you cook enough, when you do something enough, like I said, when you're been in your specific trade for a very long time, you can look at whatever the problem is, whatever it is that's right in front of your face, and say like, oh, I see exactly how you got there. No different than you could look at the number 4 and with an equal sign and be like, okay, I know you either added 1 and 3 or you added 2 and 2. Same shit. Well, when you when you cook, you're able to do the same thing. It doesn't take a long time to get to that point, but it takes the experience to be able to see how somebody got there. And this is like, it's not saying that you have to cook the same thing over and over again to figure it out. Like, no. When you figure out what ginger is like in the kitchen, how ginger acts, when you have a basic idea of the best cases to use the ingredient called ginger, the ingredient called garlic, sea salt, black pepper, mushrooms, you can look at something and say, "Oh, I know exactly how you got there, and my first step is this, that, and the third, whatever." From there, now that you've got a blueprint, you can prioritize which is the best thing to do. You know what I'm saying? If you making a spaghetti with a side salad, you could prioritize making the salad first. That way it just chills in the fridge. You see what I'm saying? You know, when you are able to pick things apart and then prioritize which is the most important, first, second, third, all the way into the last step. And then, like I said, it lessens the mental load that's on you. It keeps you from being overwhelmed by all of the sounds that are in the kitchen, all of the cutting that you have to do, the amount of ingredients that you're working with. You can, in a sense, work with things in batches. You know what I'm saying? When you look at a staircase, you're not looking all the way at the top of the staircase saying, damn, that's a real far way to go. Like, damn, I'm gonna have to take all these steps just to get there. You look at the steps that you're at and you just go one step at a time. What's the point of what's the point of worrying about what the very last step is when you haven't even taken your first step? Now, when it comes to working with God in the kitchen, working with your ancestors, you're not going to get the next step until you take the first step. There's no sense in you worrying about what your fifth step has to be, or what, like, which pot you need to cook with, if one, you ain't got the dishes clean, and you ain't got no food chopped up and prepared so that you can even start. You see what I'm saying? Why would you worry about the temperature that the oven has to be at if you got a sink full of dirty dishes and a whole bunch of food that's still inside grocery bags because you just got home? That don't make no sense. You take things one step at a time. But same token, you're not going to get that next step until you take the first step. And outside of cooking, you are always in position to take the step that is most necessary for you to take, because your soul will make sure that you're there. You just have to listen. There's no sense in worrying about what you got to do, crying and asking and asking and asking for a sign when you're already in position to do what's going to lead you to that sign. Okay? I spoke on, in a much shorter video, I spoke on the difference between thoughts that come from your ego and thoughts that come from your intuition. So letting your intuition guide you through the kitchen, your intuition is going to have you just reaching for stuff, and not like just stuff. Like, no, every action that you take, every ingredient that you grab, everything that you do is going to be aligned with whatever it is that you're trying to cook. Your ego is going to sit and question it. Your ego will look at you trying to cook spaghetti and be like, you know what? Why don't we just grab this ginger from out the fridge and see what it does? Why don't we just grab this dill weed from out the cabinet and see what it tastes like this time, But your intuition is going to be like, nah, like, you either going to get these tomatoes and make a homemade sauce, or you going to grab them spaghetti cans from out the cabinet and, toss them in the pot and heat it up. How you want to go about it? When you're making spaghetti, your intuition is not going to steer you in a strange direction. You know what I'm saying? Your intuition is going to have you stay aligned with the goal. So your ego is going to want to talk and question and make a whole bunch of suggestions as to what you could do. But your intuition is going to say, hey, you're grabbing this right now. Grab that, grab this, grab that, stir that pot. And then after you've taken those actions, it's going to tell you, this is why you had to do that step. This is why you had to stir the pot when you had to stir it. Because all your shit would have just started burning because you wasn't paying attention. You see what I'm saying? So, moving on. Your vision and your intuitions are your guides in the kitchen. Now, I'm not saying like your ancestors ain't your guides in the kitchen. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you, the chef, the vision you have in mind, your soul and your intuition are your guides while you're cooking the meal that you set out to do. All right? The meal that you set out to eat, excuse me. If you had a goal in mind to make lemonade, would it make sense for you to go buy oranges? Absolutely not. You're not aligned to the mission of the end goal, of drinking lemonade. If you had a vision to make spaghetti, would you reach in the cabinet for some soy sauce? Fuck no. That don't make sense. That's not aligned to the goal of eating spaghetti. Absolutely not, because those ingredients do not fit the criteria of the blueprint for what you want to create. Your ego will try its hardest to question and overthink and make suggestions at 1,000 possible conclusions that are designed in fantasy land and not reality. When you're trying to figure out whether it's your intuition that's guiding you or your ego, one of the things that I do is I try to figure out where those thoughts are coming from. So my intuitive thoughts, they feel like they more so sit behind me, or they have a corresponding action that goes with them. And that action is followed with confirmation as to why I had to do that. My ego thoughts, they sit at my mouth, and it sounds like I'm talking. It sounds like I'm talking. My intuition does not, my soul does not sound like conscious Brandon, if that makes sense. You know? My ego is not the guiding force while I'm cooking. My ego is either trying to keep me protected, or it just wants to figure some shit out because it can attempt to do that. And it can fantasize about all of the possible ways something could happen. But like I said, all of that is fantasy, and none of that is built in reality. Whereas my intuition, as as ethereal as the soul is, it's aligned to what is going to be created in reality. And it's going to make sure that I stay on course. Where am I at? Yeah, the thoughts of my intuition are paired with an action that is clarified once I've taken that route. My ego will not clarify anything, but will continuously question and try to suggest that I do something. The thoughts, oh, excuse me, my intuition, my soul knows the blueprint and will only do things that are aligned to that blueprint, and it will give me bits of remembrance that show me, okay, that makes perfect sense as to why I had to do that. So how do we stay aligned with our intuition, which is aligned with our goal? We gotta relax while we in the kitchen. We talked about this in the last two videos. If you can get yourself to a point where you can relax and just, like throw your arms down, let yourself be guided through the kitchen, and you just kind of chill in the background, you're good. I promise you, you're good. The process of cooking will be so efficient. Side note, like when it came to cooking in the kitchen, I I thought it was the tools that I had, whether it was the knives or the pans, the pots, the chopper, all of that stuff. But it was really the only way that I was going to be able to find an efficient way to go about cooking, which will allow me to speed up the process because I move pretty slow my damn self. The only thing that's going to allow me to have the most efficient process when it comes to cooking is if I relax and kind of let my ancestors just guide me through, let my soul guide me through. It got to a point where I would get so overwhelmed where I would try to make a whole dinner, but I'm only cooking one thing at a time. And I'm just like, half the meal is cold, half the meal is hot. Shit ain't making sense. It's a little dissatisfying, when everything is not coming together in a sense at the same time. So what I ended up doing was like, I said, okay, well, hold up. I lift my hands up and I just drop them down. I say, you know what, universe, guide me through this meal. Spirit, guide me through this meal. And in that same instance, it was like strings. Like I said, like a puppet strings. It's just everything just picked my hands up, and then the rest of the meal got made. I was not overwhelmed by all of the sounds, whether that's, like I said, water boiling, food frying, music playing, people talking in the background. I'm watching stuff on YouTube, everything, all these sounds, very, like overloading my own auditory senses. It's like when you can get to a point where you can just chill, you know, clear your mind of, clear yourself emotionally and just relax, all of the answers will come to you. All of the movements will be taken. And in the book, I relate cooking to dancing because cooking takes on its own rhythm. Cooking takes on a rhythm from going between the pots, stirring one pot, checking the oven, sitting off to the side and letting the food do what it does. Like all of that is a rhythm. And when you can get into listening to the sounds of cooking like it's music, like I said, you're good. And the process becomes easier and easier and easier. And at that point, cooking is able to put you into your trance states and into able to get you into, really doing the ritual of cooking because your your intuition is taking over. You're not consciously thinking about everything. You're not pouring negative emotions all over the place while you're making the food. You're calm, relaxed, doing what needs to be done so that the manifestation comes about properly and in the most efficient way that it can come about. Ooh. So, to end this video off, the inner divine chef is the part of you that knows how to make the meal that you choose to create become manifest. All you have to do is relax and allow that energy to guide you. Whether you recognize this force as God, an ancestor, your higher self, whatever title you choose to give it does not change the fact that it is here for guidance and that it wants you to enjoy the good foods that you set out to create. You have every reason to trust in it and no reason at all to question it. The second you get to questioning and second guessing while you picking stuff up, that's your ego that's talking. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it may come across as like muscle memory when you start just grabbing for stuff. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes you might have to catch yourself. You move some ingredients around, you move your seasonings around in the cabinet, and you grab it for basil, but you end up picking up turmeric. Like that's another thing. Like I said, your intuition is not going to steer you wrong. Your soul is not going to steer you wrong. And I'm just talking about cooking. You feel me? I'm just talking about cooking. But when you can view cooking as a spiritual practice, it is to bring you closer to your intuition, bring you closer with your soul and strengthen that bond, strengthen the relationship. And it gets strengthened by learning how to relax, learning how to channel everything that it's talking about and everything that it wants you to do, and doing it no questions asked. You feel me? So, like I said, the Intuitive Chef is a short guide on how to make cooking an easier experience. It's written for the person that loves to cook, the person that's just learning how to cook, and the person that's just looking for some motivation to get their ass up in the kitchen. Anybody and everybody can take a little bit from the chapters and actively apply what they've learned into their lives. I did not consciously write The Intuitive Chef. All of that was channeled straight from my soul. Chapter, what was it, chapter 4, love and cooking. That was the very first video that I did. That was a channel. I was listening to Whitney Houston, and it was just like, like love doesn't worry. Love don't have time. It can't hold space with the energy of worrying. If you come up in this kitchen and you start worrying if motherfuckers is gonna like the food that you eat, like the food that you cooking, you worrying about, oh well, what if I just do this? Well, what if the meal comes out like this? It's just like you out of the loop. Instantly you out of the loop. You want to pour love into the food that you making. Worrying about it, that's not love. Like, I don't talk like that. I don't talk like that. I challenged myself. The second I started thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, I'm just like, okay, like, no, erase everything. That's, it's not me that's talking through this book. This is what my soul has to say because this is what my soul has been teaching me. And that's the type of information that I wanted to come and share with y'all. But like I said, I think I got one more chapter left to talk about this. And I'm gonna leave y'all with this. So like I said, like, share, subscribe to the video, I really appreciate it.